sun was setting over the small village of Flatwoods, West Virginia on September the 12th, 1952. With a population of less than 300 people, this quiet Appalachian community was about to become the centre of one of America's most controversial alien encounters. That evening, just before dark, brothers Eddie May, aged 13, and Freddie May, aged 12, were playing in their schoolyard with their 10-year-old friend Tommy Heyer. The boys watched as a fiery, pulsating red sphere streaked across the sky. The object seemed to float around one hill, hover briefly, then drop behind the crest of another hill on a nearby farm. From the far side of the hill, a bright glow shone into the twilight sky, as if from the now apparently landed object. The boys ran to get Eddie and Freddie's mother, Kathleen May, a local beautician. Word of the strange sight spread quickly, and soon others joined the search party. Among them was 17-year-old Eugene Lemon, a National Guardsman who would lead the group up the hill. Also joining were Nell Nully, Ronnie Shaver, and Eugene's dog, which ran ahead of the group. As they climbed towards the hilltop, the dog disappeared briefly around the bend. Suddenly, they heard it barking furiously. Moments later, it came running back down the path, tail between its legs, fleeing in apparent terror. The group pressed on. A foul-smelling mist covered the ground, making their eyes water and burning their throats. When Lemon and Nunley reached the top of the hill first, they observed what they later described as a big ball of fire, about 50 feet to their right. Others in the group who saw it said the glowing sphere was the size of a house. To their left, just under the branches of a large oak tree, two small blue lights caught their attention. At Mrs. May's suggestion, Lemon pointed his flashlight towards the lights. What the beam revealed would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The flashlight illuminated a grotesque figure. The witnesses independently described its head as shaped like an ace of spades. Inside the pointed head was a circular window, dark except for the two lights from which pale blue beams extended straight ahead. These were the creature's eyes, glowing orange according to some accounts, emitting blue beams according to others. The being stood over 6 feet tall. Some witnesses would later say 10 feet. In their brief observation, they could see nothing that clearly resembled arms or legs, though some reported claw-like hands. The lower portion of his body appeared to have a metallic skirt-like base that shimmered in the flashlight beam. The creature began moving towards the witnesses. It didn't walk, it glided above the ground, hovering as it approached. A hissing sound accompanied its movement. Within seconds, it changed direction and began heading back towards the glowing sphere from which it had apparently emerged. The entire encounter lasted only moments. Eugene Lemon screamed and fell backwards, fainting from either fear or obnoxious fumes. The others grabbed him and fled down the hill in panic. One of the boys, according to the local resident John Gibson, who knew them all, wet his pants with terror. About half an hour after their descent, A. Lee Stewart Jr., a reporter and publisher for the Braxton Democrat newspaper, interviewed the witnesses. Stewart later stated, "Those people were the most scared people I've ever seen." The witnesses were barely able to speak. Some sought first aid for their symptoms: nausea, throat irritation, and dizziness that plagued them after the encounter. Stewart didn't just take notes. After Lemon recovered, the two of them grabbed a shotgun and marched back up the hill to investigate. Though they found no creature or craft, Stewart noted the same acrid odour in the air that irritated his nose and throat. "People don't make up that kind of story that quickly," Stewart would later tell reporters. The next morning, Stewart returned alone to the site. He discovered skid marks going down the hill towards a large area of recently matted grass, which seemed to indicate that a large object had rested there. Investigators would later find an oily residue at the site, though tests on the substance proved inconclusive. The Braxton Democrat broke the story first. 7 Braxton County residents on Saturday reported fleeing a 10-foot Frankenstein-like monster in the hills above Flatwoods. The article described the creature as having a blood-red body and a green face that seemed to glow. State police initially laughed off the reports as hysteria, noting sarcastically that the monster had supposedly grown from 7 to 17 feet in just 24 hours as the story spread. But the national media took notice. Within days, reporters from the Charleston Gazette descended on Flatwoods. The story hit national radio and major newspapers across the country. Mrs. Kathleen May and Jean Lemon were invited to New York City to appear on the CBS television program We the People on September the 19th, 1952. During the show, a staffed artist's drawing of the creature, based on the witnesses' descriptions, was broadcast to the nation. The sketch showed the pointed head, the glowing eyes, and the strange lower portion that witnesses had described. Flatwoods' encounter didn't occur in isolation. The night of September the 12th, 1952, saw a flurry of unusual sightings across the region. Bailey Frame, a resident of nearby Birch River, reported seeing a bright orange ball circling over the area when the monster was spotted. It remained visible for about 15 minutes before veering off towards the airport at Sutton, where the object was also reported by others. The US Air Force later revealed that bright meteors had streaked across the eastern United States at dusk that night, visible from Baltimore and other cities. But this didn't explain everything the witnesses reported. According to local accounts, 1 week before the Flatwoods incident, a woman from Western and her mother encountered the same or a similar creature. The younger woman was so frightened that she required a hospitalization after the event. Both women reported the same noxious odor that the Flatwoods witnesses described. Years later, writer John Keel interviewed a couple who claimed that on the evening following their original sighting, 10 to 15 miles southwest of Flatwoods, they encountered a 10-foot tall creature emitting a foul odor. The being approached their stalled car before returning to the woods. Moments later, a luminous pulsating sphere arose from the trees and ascended into the sky. The encounter prompted an official US Air Force UFO inquiry as part of a Project Blue Book, an initiative that had been investigating UFO reports since 1947. Plainclothes Air Force investigators were dispatched to Flatwoods. When interviewed in the early 1990s, Kathleen May Horner recalled these investigators. They first identified themselves as magazine reporters, but later acknowledged that they were government employees. Their questions felt secretive, she remembered. This deception fueled rumours of a cover-up that persists to this day. Some locals claim the military hid findings, especially after these secretive interviews. They took something, one resident said, though no proof emerged. Official reports found no extraterrestrial evidence. The Air Force investigators ultimately attributed the sighting to a combination of a meteor and an owl. They suggested that an owl perched on a branch with its eyes reflecting light could appear otherworldly in the darkness and mist. The symptoms experienced by the witnesses, nausea, throat irritation and dizziness, were dismissed as hysteria. Yet Project Blue Book classified the case as unexplained, despite their owl theory. The Flatwoods monster appeared during a time of extraordinary anxiety in America. The Cold War was at its height. The Soviet Union had successfully tested an atomic bomb in 1949. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were awaiting execution for sending American nuclear weapon designs to the Soviets. Senator Joseph McCarthy has spent 2 years stoking fears about communist infiltration. The Korean War had claimed thousands of American lives, including 4 young men aged 21 or younger from Braxton County who had died just months before the monster appeared. One of them, US Marine Private First Class Lantry R. Frame, aged 20, had grown up in Sutton, only 6 miles from Flatwoods. Just 5 months before the encounter, Life magazine, probably the most popular publication in the nation, had published an article titled "Have We Visitors from Space?" The piece included seemingly credible accounts from Air Force pilots and suggested there was scientific evidence for interplanetary visitors. The story, filled with seemingly credible accounts, appeared in April 1952, dropping into that fertile American atmosphere of fear and death and social hysteria. Freddie and Eddie May never recanted their story. They gave countless interviews over the decades before finally growing tired of the attention. Both brothers were still alive in their 70s, though by this time they no longer spoke to reporters. However, their current status is unknown. If both are alive, they would now be in their mid-80s. They got tired after 100,000 interviews, says Andrew Smith, who runs the Flatwoods Monster Museum and the Braxton County Convention Visitors Bureau. In a documentary from 2018, Freddie May looked calmly into the camera and stated, "As far as for myself, it doesn't matter to me whether people believe or don't believe." The encounter was investigated and popularised by Gray Barker, a Braxton County native who had become one of the most prominent UFO writers of his era. It was Barker who introduced the mythology of government men in black after hearing about the Air Force investigators who had posed as magazine writers in Flatwoods, though friends later said Barker himself didn't believe in UFOs and wrote about them cheerfully for money. Today, the Flatwoods Monster, also known as the Braxton County Monster or the Green Monster, has become a cultural icon. The creature appears in video games like Fallout 76, anime series and documentaries. A 2025 anime series brought it global fame. The Flatwoods Monster, A Legacy of Fear on Apple TV, explores the tale. The creature has even charmed crowds at the Mrs. America competition. The Flatwoods Monster Museum in Sutton draws hundreds of visitors weekly during tourist season. Local businesses sell monster burgers at the Spot restaurant, a double burger with double cheese, while tourists look at historic monster photos and news clippings hanging on the walls. They sell t-shirts, shot glasses, bumper stickers, and even giant monster-shaped chairs where families can sit for photos. Fans build the creatures with plastic brick sets. The museum displays artifacts including a chunk of wood from the oak tree from behind which the monster had emerged. Photographs from the era line the walls, including images of 4 of the boys who witnessed the creature: Tommy Heyer, Freddie May, Eddie May, and Neil Nunnally. There's also the drawing that 11-year-old Freddie May made shortly after the incident. Was it an extraterrestrial visitor in an environment suit, as some researchers suggest? The foul-smelling gas could have been a side effect of the suit or a defense mechanism. A crashed ship needing repairs would account for the smell, skid marks and oily substance found at the site. Was this simply an owl, misidentified in the darkness and mist, as the Air Force concluded? It was no bird, Kathleen May insisted throughout her life. The witnesses argued that no owl could match what they saw: the size, the gliding motion, the mechanical appearance. John Gibson, the Flatwoods insurance agent, who was a high school freshman in 1952 and knew all the witnesses, remained skeptical at age 81. "I don't believe in the Easter Bunny, I don't believe in Santa, and I really don't believe in the Flatwoods Monster, but I do want to boost our community." Gibson has sold 1,000 of his 12-inch tall ceramic Green Monster figurines in just the last 2 years at $30 a piece. "If you know how I could get a 26-foot fiberglass Green Monster statue made for Flatwoods, let me know," Gibson said. "That would be a big draw, don't you think?" Joan Byers, news editor at the Braxton Democrat, reflects the ambivalence of many locals. "The universe is a mighty big place. I can't imagine we might be alone in it, though I'm a Baptist, so maybe I shouldn't say that." Yet even skeptics acknowledge the genuine terror the witnesses experienced that night. Whatever they saw on that hilltop in Flatwoods, West Virginia, on September the 12th, 1952, it changed their lives forever and left a defining mark on American UFO lore. The truth about what landed in those Appalachian hills may never be fully known, but in a village of less than 300 people, the Flatwoods monster has become larger than life, a mystery that continues to captivate believers and skeptics alike more than 7 decades after that frightening encounter on a misty September evening.